Stefan Spencer here, and I'm super excited to have Bernt Ullmann as my guest today on Marketing Speak. Bernt is referred to as the man behind the brands. He has been the most trusted business acceleration expert for top fashion moguls and billionaires such as Damon John, Eddie Lampert, and Tommy Hilfiger. Bernt is arguably the world's leading expert in celebrity brand development, brand management, licensing and distribution, monetization, and he's contributed to the successful launches of brands for clients including Jennifer Lopez, Adam Levine, Nicki Minaj, and many others. Bernt, it's so wonderful, and I'm just honored to have you on the show today.
Stefan, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, first of all, I want to know, how did you get such celebrity clients as Jennifer Lopez and Adam Levine? I mean, that's pretty darn impressive.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, that's a good question. It doesn't just happen like that, right? So, I think in order to kind of get there, if you will indulge me, I'll take you on a little bit of a journey, because when I started out, it was not like I could pick up the phone and call Jennifer Lopez
Yeah.
and do a deal. So, in essence, I've always been in consumer goods. I've always been in kind of the branding space. And back in the 90s, I worked for Donna Karan. I was a corporate vice president of the Donna Karan company. I got in at a great time. I was lucky, got some good results. I opened 85 flagship stores, all over the world for her. And my division grew from around 40 million when I started to around 250 million when I left. And then I left and I went to join Damon John, the people shark on Shark Tank. And he had founded FUBU together with his three partners, and I became president of FUBU International. And that was the first kind of true exposure, I will say, to celebrity, because that brand just took on, it caught on fire, and ultimately was worn by every single music talent out there. And this was back in the day when MTV was actually playing music videos, and we would be in every single music video. And Damon has been, gracious enough to credit me with being part of taking the company from less than 100 million to over 400 million wholesale. And we had LL Cool J as a brand ambassador. So that kind of gave me a taste of the power of having celebrity attached to a brand. I left and I joined a company called Calwood when they were looking at a potential acquisition. And we finished that acquisition. That was of Fat Fashions. That was Russell Simmons' Fat Farm and Baby Fat, which was led by his wife, Kimora Lee Simmons. So
and that's PHAT, right?
That would be PHAT for pretty hot and tempting. That was the term back in the day, fat. So, but again, the brand caught on fire, and I was part of really taking that brand from probably around $85 million to $850 million retail. So wow. Very sizable growth, right? And again, Russell Simmons, absolutely a celebrity. Kimora, she had her own television show. And that again kind of led to this power of celebrity and the visibility. And I then formed a company called Star Branding in partnership with Tommy Hilfiger and his brother Andy and one other guy. So Star Branding said stars can be brands. And this is where we did all of those big transactions. So we launched Star Branding in 2009. We said stars can be brands. And ultimately what happened is when you have Tommy Hilfiger as a partner, you have to think big. And we partnered with Li & Fung, the largest apparel manufacturer in the world. And then we did a deal with Kohl's, one of the largest department stores. And they had 1,200 stores. And it was that kind of stew that we brought to Jennifer and said, there is a tremendous opportunity, low-hanging fruit, to create a brand and go into every single Kohl's stores in all available, categories. And we overnight built a global lifestyle brand for Jennifer and Mark Anthony, the husband at the time. And quite frankly, that deal is billed as the largest celebrity deal ever done. We had $3.5 billion with a B in purchasing guarantees from Kohl's. And now everything kind of becomes a lot easier, because when you do the largest celebrity deal ever done, guess what? Every other self-respecting celebrity thinks he or she deserves a $3.5 billion deal. So we ended up with a massive deal pipeline. So that's, after we did that, now we did the deal with the Rolling Stones. We did something with Steven Tyler. We did American Idol. We did the deal with the Universal Music Group, the largest music, company in the world. And that's when Eddie Lampert came, and he was then chairman and CEO of Sears and Kmart. And I ended up becoming acting CEO of a new division for them. And that's when we launched Nicki Minaj and Adam Levine into 500 fully fixtured shop-in-shops in Kmart. And those businesses jumped out to 200 million. So it was kind of a long process, and it builds, on itself.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I'm honored to even have an hour of your time here to talk about branding and marketing when you could be sitting on a beach somewhere sipping pina coladas with all the all the success that you've had and the home runs. It's pretty impressive.
You're being kind, but what you will find is, I thought for a second you said sitting on the beach, with some of the celebrities. What I will have to tell you is, what I find is that all the successful ones, they have one thing in common, and that is a tremendous drive.
Yeah.
I do not think they sit around a lot on the beach. There are no accidents. It's kind of like every overnight success was like 10 years in the making. That's definitely true. So these guys have been, grinding it out, working hard, having a vision, staying true to their vision, and then executing. They all have that in common, I have to tell you.
Yeah. Well, you look at the success of somebody like Kylie Jenner, and how she, at 21 years old or whatever it was when she became a billionaire. Right. It's just crazy to think that she doesn't even have her own manufacturing operations or anything. It's just her celebrity brand and her following, and she was able to monetize that by having just a set of really great partners.
Absolutely. And that is the true power of celebrity, because what does celebrity bring you? I would say two things, right? They bring you eyeballs and trust. So, and she has that, in spades.
Yeah. Yeah. So how does somebody listening or watching right now take their brand and either make it a celebrity brand? Maybe it's their company, maybe it's their personal brand, or how do they associate, affiliate with a celebrity so that they can leapfrog against, past all their competition?
Right. And that's a good question. And I will take the opportunity to just bring up my book, because that is a very lengthy question that you asked. And I like to think that I am providing detailed answers in my recently, launched book called The $1 Billion Branding Blueprint. But be that as it may, after this shameless plug.
That's a great plug, and I'm excited to read the book. So
thank you. No, because, there is, of course, no 1-800 celebrity. Maybe one time in the future there will be that, but it's a little more involved. And I would say, typically, if you are building your own brand, and the brand can be a superstar as well. If you look at brands like, Ralph Lauren or Tommy Hilfiger, while they may have had certain collabs, the brand in its own right is in essence the superstar, right? So you can certainly build up the brand in itself, in and of itself, and that has value. But so to try to answer your question, I think there are a number of steps, and they all have to do with consistency in messaging, whether it is your personal brand or you have a brand. I think, by the way, let's take one step further back and say, why a brand? Because I think a lot of people are listening and they're saying, that's all well and good, but why do I need to bother with a brand? I'm doing business, I'm transacting, I'm selling, I have an online store, or I have a service, or I have a product.
Yeah, let's say that they're selling products on Amazon,
right?
And they're just a commodity. Could be like they could be very successful right now on Amazon, but then they get replaced by some other competitor, and it's just whoever has the buy box or whoever is currently being favored as the Amazon pick or whatever. It's very, it's like a house of cards, really.
So you're answering the question, why brand? That is why, right? So a brand is just some type of, whether it is design or any type of distinguishing factor that sets you apart from the competition in the mind of the consumer. That's a brand. That's branding, right? Something that sets you apart. And if you don't have that, to your point, what are you really left to compete on? If there's nothing that sets you apart from the competition, you're really forced to compete on price. So I often said, that's not necessarily such a great outcome or outlook. So I often say,
it's a race to the bottom, right?
Exactly. It's exactly what I said. I like to add to that to make it more dramatic. It's a death spiral right to the bottom. Because at the end of the day, there's always someone a little more desperate or a little more miserable willing to work on lower prices. It's really, really tough. And the power of brand, just to have said that, and why I am such a big advocate, from my vantage point, brand actually equals wealth ultimately, because in addition to being able to do better transactions, if you have a brand, you now have the luxury of actually charging a little more because the brand is trusted. So instead of competing on price, you're competing on the value proposition that's inherent in the brand. And the brand has a lot to do with how you make the consumer feel. So you can charge more, so you're doing better business. And then in addition, you're building what we call brand equity, which is the value of your brand in its own right. So you're doing better business and you're building an asset for yourself, the name of the brand equity, the intellectual property.
Right. And this item called goodwill is actually sitting on your balance sheet.
That's right.
And a lot of that has to do with your brand equity.
That's exactly right. I can tell you, I said earlier, I was part of that acquisition of Fat Fashions. And so Russell Simmons and Kohl Simmons, company. And when Russell sold, he didn't actually sell his company. Okay, there, the headlines was, Russell Simmons sells his company for $140 million. No, he didn't sell his company. He sold no inventory, no machinery. There were no employees. He sold simply the IP rights. He just sold the intellectual property rights. And the goodwill that Kelwood, had on the balance sheet, $140 million. That was the value just of the IP itself. So that's pretty powerful. And another quick example, just very quickly. So I have recently also been working with Bethenny Frankel, who is one of the Real Housewives of New York. So Bethenny actually, and you may or may not be familiar with Bethenny, but most people know her brand. So she created a brand while being on the show, and it's called Skinny Girl. Skinny Girl cocktails, Skinny Girl margaritas. A lot of people, in the know in American pop culture are familiar with the Skinny Girl brand, but it was her brainchild while on a show. She ended up selling, not the company, not all of the rights to the IP, just the intellectual property rights to alcoholic beverage. And she sold for $100 million to Beam Suntory. That's, again, the power of brand.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Right?
So, yeah.
So cool, right?
And so you must be working on creating your own brand like this. I mean, I don't know if you've got like a reality show in the works or anything, but with all your know-how, you should be able to make for yourself a big fat, $100, $500 million check, right?
So that's such an interesting question. And I'm often referred to as the man behind the brands. And I have very, very rarely thought of the creation of my own brand. I would say the book is kind of a first step in saying, you know what? There is just enough information and enough in my background that I probably could be a brand, but I haven't really put my efforts into that because I still get a huge kick out of building businesses where I leverage kind of others' fame and in essence create new revenue streams for them. I open new verticals, product verticals, and I like to think that I have seen quite a bit of success doing it, and I'm continuing to do it. I've actually come full circle. I'm now coming at you, from Damon John's office. So full circle, back working with Damon. I'm working on his shark deals. He has a partnership with Catherine Zeta-Jones of, Hollywood royalty, married to
Wow.
Michael Douglas. And she has her own brand called Zeta-Jones. And I'm helping with that. It's a lot of fun. I actually really enjoy it.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
I love her too. She's such a great actress.
honestly, she's phenomenal. And again, as I said, none of them are accents, and she drives home that point. Such a terrific, not only actress but person.
Yeah.
Really,
Amazing.
seriously. Yeah.
So if somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, well, that's all fine for you, Bernt. I don't have the connections. I'm not hanging out on the red carpet or anything. Is there some way, resource, matchmaker, or something, or
Yeah.
a clearinghouse, or something that I could use to connect up with some of these celebrities? Like, I've heard about brand affinity technologies, for example.
Yeah.
I've heard of Thuzio.
Yeah.
I've heard of FameBit. So
Yeah.
FameBit for hiring YouTube stars to pitch your product. Brand
Right.
affinity technologies and Thuzio for celebrities like professional ball players and minor actors and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on those sorts of
Oh.
resources?
No, you're exactly right. And there's a lot of them coming. And I've been in conversations with a number of them. I don't necessarily want to call any of the ones that I'm talking to out right here, but I will say, yes, there are definitely services like that that you can reach out to. But I will say, for the purposes of our conversation, if someone wants to have help with actually really reaching out and attaching a celebrity to, a product or their company or their brand, I can probably just do a one-on-one for whoever that pertains to, and helping steering that the right way, as opposed to just sending them to a random kind of clearinghouse, to be honest. So I would be happy to do that. And it depends on the size, right? Because as I said earlier, we started Star Branding in 2009. That was with Tommy Hilfiger. And if you look at, for instance, the Tommy Hilfiger brand, it's a brand that's been around for a long time. It's still incredibly relevant today, driving revenue of $7.5 billion annually. How is that possible? And one of the reasons why that's possible is that Tommy is such, honestly, a great reader of current pop culture. He has the finger so on the pulse. So he has this uncanny ability to understand what's happening in the market. And it's a men's brand first. It launched as a men's brand first and foremost because Tommy Hilfiger is a guy. And, we're now years and years later. And of course, it wasn't the trendiest or hottest brand when it came to a younger female audience. So what did he do? He forged a partnership with Gigi Hadid back when she was probably just 20. And it ended up becoming so powerful. So they launched the Gigi and Tommy, collab collection, which ran for multiple seasons, was renewed several times, ended up costing the company an arm and a leg, as you can imagine. It was a great deal for Gigi, but it was also a great deal for Tommy. I mean, as Tommy is saying, it was the best money they ever spent because it put the company on steroids in an extremely important demographic, young females, who is really, spending and very into fashion. And obviously it added credibility and legitimacy that the brand may not have had before when it came to that audience. So these collaborations are very powerful.
Yeah. So somebody like Tommy Hilfiger, that brand has such staying power. It reminds me of some of these musicians or bands that have been able to survive and thrive through decades.
Right.
Such massive changes in the scene, and yet they stay relevant and they change their music. Like Madonna's music, for example, sounds totally different from what she sounded like in the 80s because she's morphed herself to stay current. And even I saw a documentary about Duran Duran
Right.
recently. They had a hit just in this decade because
Yeah.
they partnered with somebody who was an up and comer, just like what you described with Tommy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's genius, and it's very forward thinking, and you kind of set your pride aside and you say, you know what, I need to evolve or die.
Right, but exactly, it's always that, evolve or die is or innovate or die. I mean, that's what it's all about. And I think great brands, great performers, again, they have this in common: uncanny ability to kind of read the market and move with the market, and they all have this vision. They have the eye on the price. It's never about what's right in front of them. It's a longer term vision, but each and every piece is always taken. Every step is taken with the end goal in mind.
Yeah.
So, and that's how you get these, everlasting brands.
Right. And you started with Donna Karan,
Yes.
and that was your big in to
Yeah.
build upon.
Yeah.
You can apply that same strategy. I would call it the domino effect to anything related to marketing or just business. Like, for example, with my podcast, with this show, Marketing Speak, I had in my first 10 guests, Jay Abraham. So once I had Jay Abraham as a guest, it was like dominoes.
Yeah.
Whoever I wanted, I said, "Oh, by the way, I've had Jay Abraham as one of my guests." Like, oh, well, if he's willing to be a guest, I guess
Exactly.
because you don't want to get in that conversation about, well, how many downloads do you have? What's your reach?
Right.
That's not a powerful conversation. That's not a place where you're going to really come out ahead. So that is a game changer. And similarly, if you want that celebrity attachment, but it's with a brand that's not a person celebrity, but like a company. You mentioned Kohl's, you mentioned Universal Music Group, which,
Right.
by the way, both of those were clients of mine back in the
Really?
day. Yeah.
Right.
But one of the first things that put me on the map as an SEO expert and for our previous company, the one that I sold, Net Concepts, was to do a free SEO audit for Target. So
Brilliant.
Target.com was a huge brand that everyone was looking up to. They were very innovative with their online presence. This was like 2000, 2001 timeframe, so early days.
Yeah.
And we approached them, offered them a comprehensive SEO audit for free in
Brilliant.
exchange for use of their logo and a testimonial, assuming that they were happy with the deliverable. And they were ecstatic with it. They were just overjoyed with the quality of it, happy to give us just a glowing testimonial, put
Yeah.
that up on our website, and then all of the big name new clients just started pouring in.
That's exactly right. So, that's no different than our Jennifer Lopez, the largest celebrity deal ever done. And your example with Jay Abram is just as powerful because once you have interacted with a large name, a lot of the concerns that future partners may have are immediately dispelled.
Yeah.
But I really like the approach where you, in essence, offered services for free because I believe very firmly in that, where you kind of come at it from an approach of how can I help? What can I do for you?
Yeah.
What problem may I be able to solve for you? Because the reality is, the world does not need one more of anything. It doesn't need one more of you or I. The world does not need another product. So there has to be an emotional connection, and you have to solve a problem for someone. Otherwise, there's really no particular reason for being.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, secret here on how I've gotten some of my big name guests. If it wasn't enough just name dropping, sometimes I'll just offer to do some like free SEO analysis or some sort of consulting,
mhm.
like minimal amount of work on my part. Just show up on a call and go through with them and their team some low-hanging fruit that I see with their website
Right.
from an SEO perspective. And I just say, if you got 6 or 7 figures of value from that, which I'm confident you will, then say yes to spending an hour on an interview with me. Like Dave Asprey, when I got him, he's very selective about who he gets interviewed by.
Right.
And when I had him on Get Yourself Optimized, my other podcast years ago, I gave them an hour of consulting and saved them. Like they dodged a bullet because of me. They were going to start a whole new domain and start from zero with no link equity. And that was a terrible idea, and they didn't understand the SEO implications of this. And so once I explained that to them, they abandoned that whole strategy, thankfully.
Brilliant.
And then they moved all of their blog content to bulletproof.com instead of like creating brand new bulletproofblog.com or something like that. So they were very, very happy, and the hour of time that Dave spent with me getting interviewed was a very small price to pay. But I gave first,
Right.
and then
Exactly.
I got. So yeah, that's just, I think your kind of modus operandi in life is to just give first and
Yes, I agree.
let the universe compensate you. Because business is a spiritual game. I've
Really
said that
is.
before.
I believe that. I firmly believe that. So I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Uh,
Very cool. So let's talk about like from a branding perspective,
mhm.
where do you see things heading? Because we're getting into like full immersion experiences with virtual reality, and augmented reality is getting to the point where you can just wear regular glasses and it's not even some big bulky thing on your face, and you can get all this additional data on people that you're walking up to on the street, or businesses that you're about to enter, get special discounts and all. Like, it's a crazy brave new world that we're entering.
Yeah.
And what does branding and celebrity attachment and all this look like in that kind of a world? Maybe like a Minority Report even kind of world.
So I don't know that I have the answer of what it looks like, but I do know that I am seeing more and more focus on branding and the importance of being branded, and the importance of standing for something, because we are literally getting bombarded with information. There is so much information now, so much more than it was. And we have it on our phones, and as you just alluded to, it's coming at us from all directions. So if you don't have something that distinguishes you from everybody else, something that sets you apart, your brand, whether it's your personal brand or a brand that you're using as the face of whatever efforts, whether it's products or services, if you don't have that, I think you're simply going to get lost.
Yeah.
Because the noise is so staggering. And I would say it used to be, I feel like when I was dealing with entrepreneurs, a lot of people were kind of like, we are too busy. Branding is not something that's on our radar. We are too busy to focus on that right now. And I feel that has actually changed. And there also used to be this misnomer that, well, branding is having a pretty logo, or what color, I should use on my logo, what font I should, and they're like,
Right.
that's not where I'm at. I'm doing business.
I'll create your brand for $200. I'm a Fiverr.com vendor, right? And that means
Exactly.
your logo, your font, your brand colors,
Yeah.
and I've got a template. I'll just hit a button, and then here you go.
And that's just not brand. You know what I'm
No,
saying? So from
not
my
at all.
standpoint, exactly. So, but I am so surprised, pleasantly surprised, how the market seems to be evolving, and there's a much deeper understanding of the value now of having the ability to set yourself apart, and the added benefit or added value that we already covered of actually building your brand equity, and the understanding that you're actually creating an asset. So I don't feel that was there before, and not, there's still a lot of entrepreneurs that are just very busy fulfilling orders, and God bless, that's wonderful. But at the end of the day, going back to the example you gave earlier, if you don't have a brand, if you don't have anything that sets you apart, someone might change an algorithm from the one day to the next. They're not going to call you, and you may wake up and your direct to consumer business, primarily fueled by Facebook ads, it might not be there any longer. And if you don't have a brand, people don't even know where to go and find you. You have to reinvent your business from beginning. And people are starting to realize that.
Yeah.
So I'm
The,
seeing.
the way I would frame it is like it's for a lot of folks, it's about the information asymmetry. Like they have an unfair advantage in understanding how, let's say, the Amazon algorithm works,
Yeah.
or how to source products from China,
Yeah.
or how to leverage SEO, right? So
Yeah.
they've got this current information asymmetry that they're leveraging
That's right.
and monetizing, but it's again, it's like a house of cards, because somebody else can swoop in and take that information asymmetry away. It's like trying to win at the stock market.
Yeah.
Right. And you don't know that you're also playing against AIs that are super fast, like quantum computing type fast.
Yeah.
So you're currently winning, but tomorrow it could be, the whole rug can be pulled from under you. So if you instead have a brand like Kylie Jenner that just has the best in class partners that are doing the fulfillment, that are doing the manufacturing, it could be drop shipping and just not even doing any of the heavy lifting, so to speak. And it's not just Kylie Jenner. There's a lot of folks who are doing it, as you gave some examples too. So if somebody is listening to this and thinking, all right, maybe I need to do X, Y, and Z to build up a brand that then can sell for like the IP license rights, or that goodwill on the balance sheet that will be worth so much more than my inventory and my accounts receivables and all that. That's, I think, a really valuable outcome for somebody listening to say, all right, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. So what are those 3-5 different things that they need to focus on doing? Maybe it's actually just your blueprint.
Right. Well, so the blueprint obviously helps a lot. I would say the singular, probably most powerful word when it comes to building brand is consistency. And that is, when I say consistency, it is the consumer experience. You have to, in order to build a successful brand, you have to control the consumer experience across every single consumer touch point. So it is everything from how someone is dealt with on the phone to how physically, if this is a store or a showroom, and digitally. So it has to be the same experience absolutely all the way through. That is a cornerstone to building a brand, because otherwise, if the brand is not on message, it's very difficult to build anything. And basically the way we start the process is we start by defining what we call as a brand DNA. And the brand DNA is just what uniquely sets your brand or your business or your service or you apart from the competition. And you try to, distill it down to its kind of core components. And those are the components that you replicate and you roll forward for every single consumer touch point and every single product vertical. And the blueprint goes in a lot more detail, but that's kind of where you start. What's your brand DNA? And you start at the very basics. What problems do you solve? To what end? Why are you here? And then what is it that is unique about the product? What is the brand DNA? And then you harvest that, for lack of a better term, and you bring that brand consistency throughout everything you do, which is what leads to brand equity, and start building the brand equity, which is the real value of your brand. And once you have that, we talked about the exits. We talked about Russell sold for 140 million, or Bethenny Frankel, housewife of New York, she sold just alcoholic beverage rights for 100 million. That's great, but no one says you have to sell. Another vehicle that's incredibly powerful is licensing. I love licensing. I picked up on you used the term best-in-class partners earlier, and I use that all the time, because that is the power of licensing. I kind of reject the notion that anyone can be best at everything. I learned that many years ago. Back in the day, at the Donna Karan company in the 90s, When I was there originally, we didn't do licensing. We did everything in house because we knew better. We knew the vision. We were executing it on everything. And I watched when we decided to go into the fragrance business, and we spent 1 year and around $20 million. Donna had wanted a men's fragrance that replicated the smell over her husband's neck, and I watched people sitting around sniffing him, for a year.
That's
And
hilarious.
yes, and $20 million later is like, you know what? We may just not be the best people to do this well. And that was kind of one of the very first licenses that were signed for the brand. So I am a firm believer in licensing. So when you have that brand and you have that brand equity, just over at Donna Karan or over at Fat Fashions, when I said, the business grew a lot, we had sportswear. Fat Farm was a young men's sportswear brand. But by the time we were done, we said, okay, we have young men's sportswear. It's doing really well, but we would like to expand our brand universe. We would like to grow our business, but we don't any longer want to tie up any more capital in infrastructure and inventory. A great risk mitigator is licensing. So we found, using your term, best-in-class operators. We found the best-in-class operator on footwear, best-in-class operator on bags. We did jewelry. We did, of course, the fragrance, beauty products, swimwear, intimate apparel, underwear, outerwear. It ran the gamut. And then by the time we were done, we probably had over 30 licensees driving royalty income between $40 and $50 million annually.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, when the acquisition took place, the company was, not really very heavily engaged in licensing. It was losing $2 to $3 million on their wholesale operations. And after we converted to a full-on licensing model, we went from losing a couple of $1 million a year to net operating earnings well north of $30 million annually. So that's the power of licensing. So
Yeah, that's
I
awesome.
love that model.
Yeah.
Love
That what we were saying about the this best in class situation where you need to partner with different folks in different industries depending on who's really the best in that vertical. That reminds me of the issue that I have with most agencies. They tout themselves as being full service and best in class, and they can't be both.
Right.
So
Right.
it's like it's an
Exactly.
oxymoron.
Yes, it is.
Best in class agency. That by definition, an agency is a jack of all trades, master of none.
Right, exactly right. I completely agree.
Yeah.
So, no, I am a very firm believer in aligning yourself with strong partners, also because it shifts the burden of bringing the brand to market as well. The reality is at this day and age, you need to commit a lot of time and effort to properly position and market your brand. And while in all the licensing deals I do, the licensor, the brand owner, the person stays in firm control. We retain full creative control. You can still build your brand, and this is going to sound a little terrible, but on the back of your partners. And I mean it in a good way. You get all these additional engines that help in lifting the brand, putting it in front of the right retailers, and if you're still going brick and mortar, more so direct to consumer, but you get this much bigger cohesive message that ultimately will resonate with the consumer that sees the brand now in a lot of different user situations. And it was like, oh, this must be a very powerful and important brand.
Right.
And ultimately, that's how you transact when you have some type of emotional connection with the consumer.
Yeah. And I just recently found out that a brand I knew of and heard of years ago was only just a shell of IP licensing, like Stetson.
Right, for sure.
They license with
Absolutely.
a hat company,
Yep.
and a boot company, clothing company, and fragrance company, like all these different companies, and Stetson itself is nothing but just an office and in New York City, I believe, and
That's right.
a whole bunch of IP.
Right.
That's it.
Exactly. No, I know the guys and I know the office, and they're very good at what they do. But
That's amazing. I was really surprised when I heard it, but then it made sense. It made
yeah,
sense.
exactly. But
Yeah.
that's the power of strong IP, right? That's the power of brand again.
Yeah.
You don't have to be an operator
Right.
to run a strong brand. You don't have to risk your capital. Once you have the brand and you have the brand equity, there are a lot of different ways to monetize.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing that I did early on, back in like 2003, was created a brand within a brand. So Net Concepts was the brand of the agency, but there's so many agencies out there, SEO agencies specifically, that it just wasn't a differentiator enough to just do quality work and have brands like Target. I mean, it was helpful for sure,
Right.
but we wanted to further differentiate. So I invented a technology platform and then gave it a brand name of Gravity Stream. I was just trying to spending hours and hours and hours brainstorming and then searching the Whois databases for a .com that was actually available, and I finally found one, and I thought, I like this one, Gravity Stream. So that became the brand within the brand for a pay-for-performance SEO technology or platform, software as a service or SaaS.
Yeah.
And we were charging on a cost per click basis for SEO. So that was unheard of at the time, 15 cents a click. And, a comparison with what you were probably spending on paid search, it was a bargain.
Right.
And it just seemed like, a no-brainer to a lot of these bigger brands. We had Zappos as a client, Nordstrom as a client, and just a lot of different retailers in particular, because they saw the value in going with the pay for performance technology, and so that was how we were able to sell for what we were able to sell for, which is all confidential, of course. But
of course,
we were able to sell for much more than we would have if we were just an agency. I mean, that was like that was the Trojan horse, really, was, hey, we're an agency that specializes in SEO, led by Stefan Spencer, co-author of The Art of SEO and so forth. Oh, well, let's get a consulting bid, or let's get an agency bid, or whatever. Right. And then, oh, by the way, we have this technology that you probably didn't even know existed that will do an end run around all of your internal technology roadblocks with regards to your CMS or your e-commerce platform. Like, wow, that sounds great. Let's do that. And if we had only been a technology company, software as a service, then people wouldn't have come to us saying, hey, we need SEO consulting, or we need an agency.
Yeah.
And if we were just an agency, we wouldn't have that additional solution that ended up being the majority of the company's revenue was Gravity Stream click revenue. So
I was not surprised. Really clever, I have to say, and very clever. But why not? And not all that common, in the sense of you in essence engage on one level, and you ultimately transact on another.
Yeah.
We do that a lot, little differently with hero products, or if you talk about the fashion pyramid. If you take something as basic as, you're walking by a storefront and you're looking at the product in the window. The product in the window might be what makes you stop. It may make you, it's actually meant to be what make you step inside, say, hey, this looks interesting. I would like to figure out what else they do. And once you're inside, that may not, and more often than not, is not what you end up transacting on. The transaction is different.
Yeah.
So, but I think that this is the persona.
It's like going into the grocery store hungry, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's smart. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah. Thank you. So, one last question. Do you have time for one last question?
One last question, of course. I'm having really good times. I'm on overtime. You're on overtime, but yes, let's do one last question.
Okay. So why should somebody who has a great company brand, or one that's, really got some traction, why should they invest in a personal brand as well?
So that's a really good question. Um, and I think one of the reasons is that with the access to information that we have today, we care a lot more about who we transact with than we used to. So I think almost every one of the bigger successful brands that we know, more often than not, we know kind of the founder or the leader or the CEO as well. Yeah. And they become part of the story. And you kind of buying into that story as well. And I don't really care whether it's Apple and Steve Jobs or we talked about Amazon. Everyone knows about Jeff Bezos, but the Tommy Hilfiger brand is Tommy. Ralph Lauren was Ralph. Donna was, they all
Nike, Phil Knight. Yep.
You can go on and on. Exactly. And even, take McDonald's was founded by Ray Kroc. I think a lot of people know that story, and that, it's a long, long time about it. We care. So it does two things, I think. Number one, it kind of underscores the power and the value of the brand because you have a compelling story and you get to kind of follow it. And also, it makes the person an authority. So within its field. So now this is all of a sudden a trusted voice. So I think two things, number one, you're going to be more likely to transact with the brand if you like the leader and you have a relationship with the founder. And then number two, you're going to actually listen to the founder. So the founder, the persona, the leader has now a platform to do either just drive traffic to the brand and or, do something else from the platform that is bringing value to the constituents. Because at the end of the day, trust and eyeballs. That's where we find ourselves.
Well, plus two, when you sell your company, which hopefully you will, you get to keep your personal brand, but exactly the company brand goes with the acquisition.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and which I kind of neglected my personal brand and focused on net concepts. And then when I sold, I kind of had to, do some double time to get caught back up with my Stephen Spencer brand.
Right.
And also that storytelling element is so important because people they want to associate with or kind of work with somebody that they know, like, and trust, and they want to hear that story of struggle. And if your about page is just this wall of text and it's not engaging, it doesn't do the great storytelling. Like if you go to mystephanspencer.com about page, you'll see some great storytelling with a timeline and everything. I think every about page should do that timeline approach. I got that idea from Studio One Design from Greg Merrilies. It's such a great idea. People want to see how you've evolved. If you're Phil Knight from Nike or you're just a little guy who's trying to compete against the big Goliath in the industry, they want to hear about that. They want to be able to see those milestones and root for you.
100%. And just adding on to that, Phil Knight was that little guy once upon a time. Back in 1964, that's when Nike was founded. He was a student athlete, and he founded the company in partnership with his coach. So he was still going to school when he founded the company. And I actually don't think it was founded as Nike. I think it was founded as Blue Ribbon Sports or something like that. And a few years in, they changed it to Nike. So that's what's so great about those big names and those big personas that we know today. They all started out. Some, go way back, and there's a beginning, and they were no different than anyone else that's, listening or watching right now.
Yeah, so that's awesome. All right, so I hope I hope that we've inspired our listener to really get off their butts and do something major in terms of building a brand presence for their company and for themselves. What would be the best place for them to go to read the billion dollar branding blueprint, to potentially work with you if they could afford you, and maybe learn from you from your very social channels and maybe email newsletter, all that sort of stuff?
So the easiest place is probably berntullmann.com. So BERNTULLMANN.com. I'm originally Norwegian. I know I'm supposed to be tall and blonde with blue eyes. I see you have the blue eyes over there, but I'm not sure what happened. But BerntUllmann.com, and you will see the book, and you will see also how you can interact with me. I also have a company called Celebrity Lifestyle Brands, and you can also find everything you need at CelebrityLifestyleBrands.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Bernt. This was fabulous, and yeah, not just information, but inspiring. So thank you again.
Now, likewise.
All right.
I truly enjoyed it, so thank you.
Yeah, me too. It's perfect. So, listener, now get out there and do something amazing. Check out the show notes, the transcript, checklist, all that sort of good stuff on marketingspeak.com for this episode, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Marketing Speak.